Look at the person sitting beside you. Lean in just a little and notice the tiny movements across their face, the slight tightness in the jaw, the rhythm of their blinking, and the small changes in posture that most people never notice. The study of human behavior teaches us something surprising. The most dangerous person in any room is rarely the loudest. It is almost never the one demanding attention, showing off status, or filling every moment with stories about themselves. Many people have been taught to believe that the narcissist is the greatest predator in relationships. They seem powerful, but they are also predictable. Their behavior follows the same pattern again and again. They chase validation, seek control, and constantly feed their ego. Once you understand the signs, their actions become easy to read. They are loud. They are deeply insecure. Nearly every move they make is guided by hidden fears. Yet there is another person in this picture that almost everyone overlooks. Quiet, patient, watching, the empath. For months, sometimes even years, the empath remains in the background of the relationship. To outsiders, and especially to the narcissist, this person appears weak. They seem agreeable. They take emotional hits without fighting back. They forgive repeated disappointments. They continue giving chance after chance. The narcissist mistakes this for complete surrender. They believe they have already won. They think they have found an endless source of attention and emotional energy. What they never realize is that while they were busy playing the same exhausting games, the empath was quietly observing everything. Every reaction, every pattern, every weakness. They were not simply enduring the pain. They were collecting information. They learned exactly what drives the narcissist. They noticed the hidden wounds beneath the confidence. They discovered the words capable of shaking that carefully built identity. Without realizing it, they gathered the keys to the narcissist's entire emotional system. Then one day, something changes. A boundary is crossed. The emotional switch flips. Stay with me, because this is where everything begins to shift. What happens when someone who has always felt everything suddenly decides to feel nothing at all for you? The emotional warmth disappears. The gentle mirror becomes a sharp edge. If you have ever seen an exhausted empath finally reach their limit, you have witnessed something few people understand. What follows is not loud revenge. It is quiet psychological collapse. Over the next few moments, we will explore why the narcissist never sees this moment coming. What silently changes inside the empath's mind when they finally disconnect, and how one small change in body language can leave even the most skilled manipulator completely unprepared. Most people miss this part, so don't skip what comes next. They expect tears. They expect desperate messages. They expect someone to beg for another chance. But the moment the empath stops reacting, the narcissist's entire strategy falls apart. Every tactic they depended on suddenly loses its power. It becomes almost impossible to manipulate someone who is quietly observing you like a scientist studying a subject through a microscope. This is where the balance shifts. A narcissist usually attacks with broad, predictable insults. They call people crazy. They call them selfish. They accuse them of being ungrateful. Their words are loud but rarely precise. They swing with force, hoping something lands. A worn-out empath is completely different. When they finally choose to speak, they do not rely on volume. They rely on accuracy. Every sentence is carefully placed. Every word has a purpose. They already know which truth reaches beneath the surface and touches the hidden wound the narcissist has spent years trying to cover. They do not raise their voice. They do not argue. They simply hold eye contact with calm body language and speak one quiet truth that cuts deeper than any shouting ever could. That single moment can feel devastating because the mask no longer works. The performance is over. The narcissist suddenly realizes they are standing in front of someone who sees every layer beneath the image they worked so hard to build. That realization creates an intense inner collapse. The confidence disappears. The illusion of control fades. The authority they depended on begins to crumble. The person they believed they completely understood is now impossible to predict. While the narcissist has always relied on ego and repetition, the empath has quietly built an incredibly detailed understanding of the other person's emotional patterns. Never confuse kindness with helplessness. Some of the strongest people are not those who rush toward conflict. They are the ones who quietly endure it, carefully observe it, fully understand it, and then end it without creating unnecessary noise. Stay with me, because the next part reveals why this shift catches almost every manipulator completely off guard. The real story begins beneath the surface, where behavior is shaped long before words are ever spoken. When a narcissist meets an empath, they are not simply meeting another person. Their mind immediately begins making quick judgments based on what they see. They notice patience, they notice flexibility, they notice someone willing to adjust, compromise, and tolerate emotional discomfort to keep peace in the relationship. Inside the narcissist's thinking, those qualities are instantly labeled as weakness. They assume strong patience means weak boundaries. They mistake calmness for fear. They believe someone who avoids conflict must be incapable of defending themselves. That assumption becomes one of their biggest mistakes. They see a person choosing peace and convince themselves that this person would never choose strength if necessary. Over time, this creates a false picture that feels completely real to them. They become comfortable with an empath who responds to criticism by reflecting, responds to hostility by calming the situation, and responds to manipulation by trying even harder to make things work. Because this pattern continues for so long, the narcissist begins believing they have fully figured the other person out. They become certain they know exactly how much pressure they can apply, exactly how far they can push every situation, and exactly what emotional response they will receive every single time. The empath starts to look completely predictable in their eyes, almost like a dependable resource they can always control. Yet everything the narcissist believes is built on a false foundation. What appears to be weakness is actually remarkable emotional discipline. The empath is not remaining quiet because they lack courage. They remain quiet because they are processing every detail at a level the narcissist never notices. While the narcissist focuses on winning small power struggles, the empath is silently recording every expression, every change in tone, every contradiction, every emotional outburst, and every attempt at manipulation. The narcissist believes they are operating in complete secrecy, never realizing they are revealing themselves with every move they make. Each emotional reaction exposes another hidden insecurity. Every attempt to shift blame reveals another weakness. Every effort to control someone provides another clue about what truly drives them. They continue acting carelessly because they are trapped inside the false belief that the empath will always remain the same. They never imagine that the quiet person in front of them has been building a complete psychological map all along. And when that map is finally used, the outcome surprises everyone. Don't miss what comes next, because this is where the entire dynamic changes forever. Day after day, they mistake the empath's patience for unlimited permission to keep taking, keep pushing, and keep crossing boundaries. What they never realize is that patience is not endless. It has a limit. Every act of disrespect slowly consumes the kindness that once protected them from facing the reality of who they have become. Eventually, that invisible line is crossed, and something remarkable happens inside the mind. This is the moment we can describe as the cognitive snap. To understand it, imagine the brain as a powerful electrical network. For months, sometimes years, the empath's emotional system has been carrying more pressure than most people could ever tolerate. They have absorbed criticism, confusion, blame, and emotional chaos while constantly searching for understanding. They kept trying to make sense of impossible situations. They kept offering compassion where very little existed. They kept hoping that things would finally change. But every electrical system has a safety mechanism. When the pressure becomes too great, the system protects itself. In that single instant, the empath's emotional breaker switches off. It is not revenge, it is survival. Suddenly, the mind redirects its energy away from overwhelming emotion and toward clear, logical thinking. Everything becomes sharper. The emotional warmth that once filled the room quietly disappears. The atmosphere changes. The calm no longer feels comforting. It feels distant. This is the exact moment when someone who was once seen as easy to control becomes impossible to manipulate. The narcissist rarely notices this internal shift until it becomes visible. One moment, they believe everything is following the usual pattern, and the next, the rules have completely changed. They expect someone they can upset, confuse, or guilt into reacting. They have spent years perfecting responses for tears, anxiety, and emotional conversations. Instead, they find themselves facing someone who feels entirely different. The posture changes. The head tilts slightly, the blinking slows, the expressions of concern quietly disappear, replaced by a calm, steady look that studies everything without judgment. It is the gaze of someone observing facts rather than emotions. Stay with me, because this is where the entire balance begins to reverse. The familiar tactics appear once again. Anger, blame, guilt, confusion. The same patterns that worked countless times before are used again with complete confidence. But this time nothing happens. The words no longer reach their target. They simply return without creating the reaction they were designed to produce. The empath is no longer absorbing every emotional impact. Instead, they are reflecting everything back with remarkable clarity. This is what makes the change so powerful. The empath does not become louder or more aggressive. They become incredibly accurate. Once the emotional noise fades away, every observation collected throughout the relationship suddenly connects together. Every contradiction, every broken promise, every manipulation, every carefully hidden insecurity, every attempt to control. Years of silent observation organize themselves into a complete psychological picture. The narcissist senses that something has shifted and usually responds by pushing even harder. They increase the pressure, hoping to provoke anger, sadness, fear, or even a single emotional response that proves they still have influence. They desperately search for anything that matches the old pattern they depended on. Instead, they are met with quiet stillness. No panic, no desperate explanations, no emotional struggle. The empath has stepped outside the game completely. They are no longer reacting to the behavior. They are watching it unfold in real time, waiting for the exact moment when simple truth carries more weight than endless arguments ever could. Throughout the relationship, the narcissist believed they were draining an endless source of emotional energy, never realizing they were also revealing every part of themselves. Without meaning to, they handed over the information that would eventually expose every weakness behind the image they worked so hard to protect. In human behavior, the person with the clearest understanding of the situation usually holds the greatest advantage. And this is the part most people never see coming. Don't miss what happens next, because everything that follows is built on this hidden imbalance. For months, and sometimes even years, the narcissist moves through the relationship believing they are the only one studying the other person. They repeat the same manipulation patterns again and again, testing limits, searching for weaknesses, and looking for new ways to stay in control. From their point of view, they are always one step ahead. But while those predictable games continue, the empath is quietly noticing everything without even trying. A highly sensitive nervous system does much more than simply hear words. It notices the tiny change in someone's voice, the slight shake in a hand, the hesitation before an answer, the shift in eye contact, and the brief moments when confidence disappears behind fear. Throughout the relationship, the empath has been collecting these details one after another. Every conversation becomes another piece of information. Every emotional reaction reveals another clue. The narcissist never realizes they are leaving behind an entire trail of psychological evidence. Every dramatic outburst, every desperate attempt to impress others, every exaggerated story, and every explosion over the smallest criticism quietly exposes something deeper. Without intending to, they reveal exactly what hurts them most. They reveal what makes them feel insignificant, what fears they constantly hide, and which beliefs they desperately need to protect in order to keep their carefully built image alive. Over time, the empath develops an incredibly detailed understanding of the narcissist's inner world. In many ways, they begin to understand the narcissist more clearly than the narcissist understands themselves, because denial constantly clouds self-awareness, while careful observation reveals what denial cannot hide. Then, when emotional attachment finally disappears, every piece of information collected over months or years suddenly becomes available all at once. The picture is complete. The empath no longer needs to guess where the hidden weaknesses are. They already know. They do not need emotional arguments or dramatic accusations. They know exactly which beliefs support the entire illusion and exactly which quiet truths could cause that illusion to collapse. This is why the balance changes so quickly. While the narcissist keeps repeating the same familiar tactics, the empath is seeing every move before it fully unfolds. Every excuse, every attempt to shift blame, every projection, and every carefully crafted lie immediately connects to years of observed behavior. The person who once appeared easy to control is now calmly standing with a complete understanding of the situation, holding information the narcissist never imagined had been gathered. Stay with me, because the next idea changes the way most people think about empathy forever. For a moment, forget the complicated psychological terms and look at the basic mechanics of human behavior. Most people have been taught that empathy is simply kindness or compassion. They think it is nothing more than being caring, forgiving, and emotionally available. But that explanation barely scratches the surface. Empathy is also an extraordinary ability to understand what is happening inside another person's mind. It notices emotions before they are spoken. It recognizes motivation behind behavior. It senses fear hidden beneath confidence and insecurity hidden beneath arrogance. When an empath is emotionally connected, this ability naturally works alongside compassion, patience, and understanding. That is why they often choose forgiveness instead of conflict. But when the emotional connection finally breaks after repeated disappointment, the ability to observe does not disappear. The empathy remains, only its purpose changes. Instead of protecting the relationship, it begins protecting the person. The same awareness that once searched for ways to help now searches for truth with remarkable clarity. Every observation becomes sharper. Every contradiction becomes easier to recognize. Every hidden motive becomes more obvious than ever before. This shift can be incredibly unsettling, because the narcissist has spent years building an image designed to hide insecurity beneath confidence and weakness beneath control. Most people only see the image and mistake it for genuine strength. They respond with shouting, emotional arguments, or endless explanations, believing louder words will somehow break through the wall. Instead, those reactions often give the narcissist exactly what they were hoping for. But someone who sees beneath the image does not waste energy fighting the surface. They quietly recognize the difference between appearance and reality. And once that difference becomes impossible to ignore, the entire relationship begins to look completely different. Most people never notice this hidden shift until it has already happened. Don't miss what comes next, because this is where the illusion starts falling apart piece by piece. But someone who has finally reached their limit does not waste energy attacking the image the narcissist presents to the world. They no longer argue with the performance because they already understand what exists beneath it. they recognize that behind every display of confidence often hides fear, insecurity, and the constant need for approval. They no longer focus on the loud behavior. They notice the quiet emotions driving it. Instead of reacting to every dramatic moment, they begin seeing the deeper patterns that have been there all along. This understanding changes everything. They know how the narcissist builds their sense of importance, which means they also understand how fragile that structure really is. They know which beliefs are holding everything together and which truths the narcissist spends every day avoiding. They do not need endless arguments or emotional confrontations. A few calm words, spoken without anger or fear, can sometimes carry far more weight than hours of shouting. What makes this so unexpected is the complete absence of emotional intensity. The narcissist is prepared for outrage. They expect tears. They expect accusations and dramatic scenes that allow them to shift blame or rewrite the story. Instead, they are met with something far more unsettling: calm observation, quiet honesty, a steady voice that simply describes what has been happening without exaggeration or emotion. There is no hatred, no desire to win, only a clear understanding of reality. One by one, the carefully protected image begins to lose its strength, not because someone attacked it with force, but because someone finally stopped believing it. The illusion starts to unravel piece by piece, and the person who once seemed impossible to challenge suddenly appears surprisingly ordinary. Stay with me, because the final stage is the one almost nobody expects, and it changes the entire balance of the relationship. When this silent turning point finally arrives, the ending rarely looks dramatic. Most people imagine major conflicts ending with shouting, slammed doors, endless arguments, or emotional explosions. That is the environment where the narcissist feels most comfortable. Chaos gives them opportunities to redirect attention, create confusion, and regain control. But the exhausted empath chooses something completely different. Instead of entering another battle, they quietly step outside of it. The silence that follows is not empty. It carries a message stronger than any argument ever could. It signals that emotional investment has ended. The explanations stop. The defending stops. The endless attempts to fix the relationship quietly disappear. For someone who depends on emotional reactions to maintain control, this silence becomes deeply unsettling. Suddenly, the familiar strategies begin appearing one after another. There may be promises to change, sudden affection, attempts to create guilt, angry outbursts, emotional stories designed to pull the empath back into the same cycle. In the past, those tactics usually created exactly the response the narcissist expected. This time, they meet only calm distance. The empath remains steady. Their face reveals very little. Their body language stays relaxed. Their decisions become clear and consistent. Without emotional reactions feeding the cycle, the old patterns lose their influence. The narcissist begins trying harder, but every effort produces less and less effect. The realization slowly appears that the control they believed they possessed was never as permanent as they imagined. Meanwhile, the empath quietly follows through with actions instead of arguments. They create firm boundaries. They stop unnecessary conversations. They remove access where needed. They close chapters instead of reopening them. Then, with remarkable calm, they continue moving forward. There is no celebration, no revenge, no dramatic farewell. Only the quiet confidence of someone who has finally chosen peace over endless conflict. In the end, that silent decision often speaks louder than any words ever could. And if you followed this journey from beginning to end, you've already seen the lesson that so many people overlook. True strength is not always the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it is the person who quietly decides they will never return to the same cycle again.